Buying new gear is like a box of chocolates. Tarps. There are so many different sizes, shapes, and materials. It's like a box of chocolates, 'cause you never know what you're gonna get.
Are you stupid?
Mama always said, stupid is as stupid does. I'm gonna go hike now.
Hike, I must hike.
Don't be stupid. Buying a tarp is more predictable than a box of chocolates. Now you want to balance having a small, lightweight tarp with one that is durable and will protect you from the elements. Here are some basics on tarps. War Bonnet sells 8 different tarps. Most of them come in either an 11, 12, or 13-foot ridgeline and can be ordered in either 30D sil nylon or 20D sil poly. Multiple colors and patterns are available. I have slept in a War Bonnet Ridge Runner for a long time, and due to the suspension on a Ridge Runner, it requires a longer 13-foot tarp. Now most of you are still sleeping in gathered end hammocks.
Freaks.
And a gathered end hammock only requires a shorter 11-foot tarp. Most backpackers pack their fears, which probably means a big heavy tarp. My first tarp was the Housefly from Eno. It is a full-doored sil nylon 1 pound 9 ounce tarp that provides 100% coverage and goes all the way down to the ground, all the way around. When I upgraded my hammock to the Blackbird XLC, I also upgraded my tarp. I purchased the 11-foot Superfly 30D nylon tarp, which is very similar to the Housefly in that it has full doors, reaches all the way to the ground, and provides 360-degree coverage. Here are some specs for the War Bonnet Superfly. You can see that they cost from $150 to $170 and weigh from 19 to 22.5 ounces. Up to this point, I had purchased 11-foot sil nylon tarps. Now, sil nylon is a very durable fabric. However, it is a little bit heavier, it stretches a little bit more, and it retains water a little bit more. Now, they are just as waterproof, but it's going to take that tarp a little bit longer to dry out. I purchased the Mountain Fly from War Bonnet with a 13-foot long ridge line, and because I was conscious about weight, this tarp only has partial doors, and I ordered the tarp that is made out of a 20D sil poly. Sil poly is a little bit lighter, it doesn't stretch out as much, and it retains less water. However, that 20D sil poly is super thin, and when I first got it, I was really concerned about the durability. But I've had this for over 2 years. I've had it in some really bad wind and some really bad storms, and it's still in great shape. Here are some specs on the Mountain Fly. They range from $145 to $175 and weigh from 16.75 ounces to 19.75 ounces. To this point, all 3 of my tarps were 10 feet wide. Now, the Mountain Fly is 13 feet long and 10 feet wide. So it is very big. When I go out, oftentimes I just go out in the middle of the woods and do some dispersed camping, which means there isn't a formal campsite. I also go to the Boundary Waters Canoe Area Wilderness where the campsites are very small. So when you have this big of a tarp that covers 130 square feet, sometimes it can be difficult to find a spot to hang your hammock that accommodates that big of a tarp. I just started to think that the amount of coverage and protection that I had around my Ridge Runner was more than I really needed. Now, I did a video on the Mountain Fly a couple of years ago, and I will put a link to that right up here in the cards. War Bonnet sells 3 different partial door tarps. A couple of months ago I bought the smaller Thunderfly tarp, and you can see here from these photos the difference in size between the Mountain Fly, the Thunderfly, and the even smaller Mini Fly. You'll notice that not only are the doors shorter, but the Thunderfly offers a tarp that is a little bit narrower. This tarp is 103 inches wide, opposed to the Mountain Fly, which is 120 inches wide, so my tarp is 17 inches narrower. Warbonnet recommends that all 13-foot ridgeline tarps are preferably made out of the heavier 30D sill nylon. So that's what I went ahead and ordered. Here are some of the specs of the Thunderfly. They range in price from $135 to $165 and weigh from 13.4 ounces to 16.8 ounces. While I was initially a little leery of the 30D nylon being heavier, stretchier, retaining more water, I found that since this tarp is that much smaller, the difference between that and the 20D sill poly is really minimal, and I'm happy that I got this one for a little bit extra durability. Speaking of durability, I highly recommend that you get the pullouts on the side of your tarp. What these pullouts do is they pull out the tarp and create more room underneath your tarp for your hammock. And it's especially important if you do have a bridge hammock like a Ridge Runner that have the spreader bars, that this pulls the tarp out away from your hammock, away from those spreader bars, so when there's a storm, it isn't blowing into the spreader bars and it will protect your tarp. Now you will see that I have these poles going over the top of my tarp, pulling the tarp out. Warbonnet used to sell these poles, but apparently some people had some problems with the poles wearing on the top of the ridge line, or when it's windy, the pole actually piercing the tarp. Now, I have never had that problem in 3 years that I've been doing this, and I am doing this at my own risk. If you want to get poles like this, you can probably find them from a different vendor. However, you should know that you shouldn't expect Warbonnet to replace your tarp if you go with these poles over the top. The recommended way for pulling out your tarp is to use some guy lines in your hiking pole or a big stick. You simply tie the lines onto the pullouts, bring them out to your stick or your hiking pole, and stake that down to the ground. While this may be a little bit lighter, I prefer the poles over the top because I think it pulls out better and it's a little easier. On larger tarps like the Superfly and Mountain Fly, Warbonnet is now offering a center pole pocket and center pole kit. This can do the same thing for pulling out your tarp, but it's done with a pole on the interior of your tarp. And I think that would be a really great option, especially when it's snowing out and you're expecting snow to accumulate. Because with these pullouts, it's a rather flat pullout here, and with that bar it's more rounded and it will shed that snow better. I'm super in love with my Thunderfly. It's lighter, it's more compact, it's durable. This blue color isn't bad either. So what you're wondering is, does this smaller tarp provide enough coverage in the elements? Well, I set up my Thunderfly in 3 different positions depending on the weather. If the weather is nice and not windy, I put my ridgeline high and use all 6 feet of the guy lines for a wide hang. This allows for good viewing out of your hammock and allows me to stand up under the tarp. If the weather is average, there's a little bit of wind and it might rain, I put my ridgeline at an intermediate height and I put my guy lines out about halfway. This is the setup that I use most of the time, and it still provides good coverage when there is rain. It also allows some viewing, and it requires me to bend over a little bit while I am standing up. The third setup is called storm mode. This is when I expect wind and rain. The ridgeline is low, the guy lines are as short as possible to allow my hammock to be under it without the spreader bars touching my tarp. It has virtually no viewing outside of the tarp, and I have to crouch way over when I'm under my tarp. War Bonnet offers an even smaller partial door tarp called the Mini Fly. I'm not quite ready for that small of a rain fly yet, but the Mini Fly is 29 inches narrower than the Mountain Fly, and it is 12 inches narrower than my Thunder Fly, and it has even shorter doors. Here are some of the specs on the Mini Fly. It ranges in price from $130 to $160, and the weight ranges from 11.75 ounces to 6.8 ounces. Here's an important tip to remember when you purchase your tarp. Most tarps do not come with the guy lines or ridge lines attached, and you will have to purchase some line and rig that up on your tarp. Now, War Bonnet has a short video on doing this, and I'll put a link to that right up in the cards. You will also need to seam seal the pullouts on your tarp. It's a really easy process, and War Bonnet provides you with a little tube of silicone to do it. However, you want to do it at least a few days before your first camping trip because it takes a little bit of time to dry. Of course, War Bonnet isn't the only company that sells tarps. However, that is where most of my experience is, and I can give you the hands-on testimonial that these tarps are really great tarps. Hey, if you have any questions about tarps that I did not answer in this video, go ahead and leave a comment down below and I will try to answer those questions.
If you like this video, go on to that there YouTube and press the subscribe button. And it's got this little bell button. Press that and it'll tell you when Midwest Backpacker puts out new videos. And there's these things on the interweb. It's called the YouTube and the Instagram. I'm tired. I think I'm gonna go home now.